starting to look a little bit weird. If it starts to rain, Nick, you gotta drive me back to my car.
Okay.
Is the top down?
No. You won't. That's right.
I was gonna say, when I just looked a minute ago and there wasn't anything.
No, I know, but this, I know, the radar doesn't show you anything. It just looks weird out there. There's some clouds over there.
Never trust what the weather tells you.
Yeah.
Well, there's a little pop-up coming up, but hopefully we'll be done by then. It has to be done by it rains.
Yeah.
All right.
So what happens if 9 p.m. when you do that long?
I hope not.
I hope not.
I'll be hungry.
Linda's gonna cancel it for us.
Oh, really?
That's interesting. Okay, looks like it's 5:15 to me, so we'll go ahead and call the July meeting of the Board of Aviation Commissioners of the City of Warsaw to order. You all should have received your documents through board pack, or if not, some other method. And the first thing on the agenda would be approval of the minutes from the June 22 meeting.
I make a motion to accept the minutes as presented.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Motion carried. Next, claims. What do you want to draw our attention to specifically, Nick?
The only big one out of the ordinary is for the Oscar W. Larson, $1,493. We have been having some issues. Well, first off, we had some new regulations passed by IDEM and the EPA as far as testing for the Vita root system out at the fuel farm. And those required some additional inspections of the Vita root system. The Vita root system is what both calculates how much fuel is in the tanks, so we know how much is in there on a daily basis, but it also lets us know if there's any leaks that are happening in any of the tanks. And so obviously that's something we need to keep up to date on. There were some new regulations passed that went into effect on July 1st. So we needed to make sure we were in compliance with those prior to, so we had that taken care of with that $1,493. And then we also we're having some issues with one of the circuit boards. We've got a new one on order, and so it's working right now, but we're just gonna go ahead and replace that just because that is such an important part of our system. It's only about $150, so you'll see that on next month's claims docket. Outside of that, pretty quiet month, I think, unless you have any specific questions.
Anything further for Nick?
I make the motion to accept the claims as presented, especially Ascent Aviation for $79,333.01.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay. Motion carried. Next, Robert, I think you're up. You seem to be displaying a split personality today, but I'll assume you'll explain that to me.
I will. I've got Ranjit with me today. He's one of the lead engineers on a lot of the RSAD and most of the task orders that we have going on with the airport. So,
Hey, Ramji, how you doing?
hello everyone. I'm good. I'll go ahead and share my screen. There is a lot to go through here today, and I'm sure you're going to have questions. So I'll hit the highlights first, and then we'll get into a little bit more of the.
Can you zoom in a little?
So standard update on the task order 2, which is the AIP or the power line project. We're finalizing the permanent construction airspace information for submittal to FAA. That's just making sure that there's no airspace obstructions to any existing or proposed development on the airfield as it's associated with the runways and the towers. And ongoing coordination with AIP throughout the project duration. So we're still on the new track for getting all of the materials next year, early spring and construction in the summer, on track for November 2024 completion, potentially sooner. So nothing's changed. We're just finalizing some of the airspace information.
Okay?
For the RSAD, task order number 4, that project is ongoing. The QC, the quality control for the project, took a little bit longer than anticipated, so we're looking at August. It was previously end of July for FAA review and approval. That's contingent upon the timing of the FAA review and approval of the forecast, which I'll get into in just a second. But the RSAD document is ready to go, and we'll have that submitted to Nick by this Friday. And we have a tabletop, a workshop scheduled for next Friday with Nick to go through the RSAD itself. For the forecast that is related to this project but not related to this contract, it's pending the letters of support from Depew Imager and Zimmer Biomet. The documentation and the numbers are completed, but prior to FAA submittal, we need to have the letters of support from those operators to justify what we're proposing in the forecast. And what we're proposing in the forecast is a continuation of what's called the critical aircraft, which is the Challenger 650, in order to maintain the existing infrastructure of the airport. So what's remaining on that project is to finalize the forecast, get that submitted to the FAA, finalize the draft for owner review, get that submitted to Nick, and then get it submitted to FAA and NDOT for review, and then subsequent to that, we'll be doing the financial feasibility. Related to this project, we do have a board action to approve invoice number 58412.45, which is a total of $13,610, and that's a local share of $680.50. Any questions on that before the board action?
Anything from anybody?
Okay.
I move
Very
we
good.
approve the invoice 58412.4-05 for the total of $13,610.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve invoice 58412.4-05. Further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed saying nay. Motion carried.
Very good. Thank you, gentlemen. And I have that in Nick's inbox. Linda, I need to send that to you too, so we can get that over to Jay for signature.
Yep, we'll get that taken care of.
Yep. For task order number 5, that is the wildlife hazard site visit. That was approved during the April meeting. We were pending FAA approval. The last we talked to FAA, they have basically gave us the go-ahead, but we haven't gotten the grant award yet. So prior to any type of notice to proceed, we are awaiting FAA to give us the grant first. So
Just a quick, I do have an update on that, Robert. So I talked to Victor at FAA. Jay, have you received that grant in your email yet?
I received one last week,
Okay,
which it was the one originally designed for you
yeah,
to sign, and then I signed it, and he had to get Scott's approval yet, and I had an email near the end of last week saying that everybody had signed as needed to sign.
okay. So I had not seen that email yet. So Robert, I'll check with Victor tomorrow, because the last I heard, they had not put Jay's name in there, and I asked that to be changed, so
Yeah.
we were waiting on
Okay.
that.
And we added those signatures after that, and I think Scott did sign
Okay.
it too. So.
Okay.
Okay, so pending all the grants, we'll probably have notice to proceed prior to next board meeting, so we'll have an update for you on the actual labor effort itself during the August board meeting. All right, so to get into where there's probably going to be questions, we have two upcoming task orders, task order number 6 and 7. Task order number 6 is the corporate taxi lane E1 rehabilitation and reconstruction. So we need a board action for the approval of that task order 6. That's a total contract value of $171,220. That contract is fully funded by the state grant that we've been discussing for the last few months, that Nick has been talking with you guys about. We anticipate that grant being awarded in September or October of this year. However, as it relates to task order number 7, which is the taxiway Bravo rehabilitation, which we will also need a board action for the approval of that task order, which is a total contract value of $2,011,470, and it does have a local share that's being funded out of the bill allocation. And that local share is $10,573.50. So what we're trying to do with these, knowing that we're getting the grant in September, October, we need to move forward on the geotechnical pursuits so that we really understand what we're going to need to do on some of these projects, specifically E1. And so to understand what the total, we have a written scope, but in order to be able to align some of the engineering and design aspects of these projects, we need the geotechnical ahead of time so that we can stay on schedule, specifically with the state grant. And so what we'd like to do is get the authorization to proceed with the geotechnical pursuits for task order number 6, that's $10,100. And for task order number 7, that's $21,900 for a total of $32,000. Now there's a caveat with this. We think that by the time we have team mobilization and we actually get the team in the field to do any of the labor effort associated and invoicing, most likely that timing will be with the grants in September, October. And so, it's already July 11th. We get approval today. It's probably going to take us a couple weeks to get people out there. Month of August will be the work. We're probably not going to see an invoice for this work until September or October. But we need to get the work started ahead of time so that we don't get into, late fall and colder months for this work. And we want to do it together so that we can really maximize the dollar here. So there's 3 things that I'm asking. One is an approval of task order number 6, which is the corporate taxi lane E1 rehabilitation reconstruction. 2 is the approval of task order number 7, which is taxiway Bravo rehabilitation. And 3 is the approval to move forward on the geotechnical pursuits for both projects.
So I'll step in and just clarify if that's okay, Robert.
Yep, absolutely.
Been working really closely with Robert and Nathan. We want to get these projects going. We've got this big grant from the state and we want to make use of it as soon as we can. And so we had set aside money to do some Band-Aid fixes on the corporate taxi lane this year. Since we got the grant from the state to fix it the right way, we had some money sitting aside. And so to push these projects forward and get the design of the 2 projects going quicker, we will use local money up front to get this potentially use it up front. If we don't get the bill until after we get the grant, then it's just like any normal grant and we do the normal drawdown. However, we do have the money sitting in the bank right now so that if we do get the bill before the grants come through, the geotech has to be done either way. And so this just allows us to get that part of the project going sooner rather than later.
Okay. 2 questions. Robert, I gather that the team that does this work is not your in-house people, but somebody else?
That is correct.
Okay. I thought I understood that. Secondly, the key words to your, beginning of your presentation were, "We will get these grants." I wrote it down because you used those exact words. Is that really absent volcanic interruption of the operations of the state? Is that a sure thing?
Yes.
Okay.
Both for task order number 6 and task order number 7. Task order number 7 is just, is bill allocation, so it's like any other AIP grant that we have at the airport, and that is approved with FAA. Task order number 6 is the state grant. This is kind of the first time that at least I'm aware of this level of investment into the state airports, and the grant being run by the state and not the Department of Aviation. So pending any, like you said, catastrophic confusion, we do anticipate the September, October timeframe to get the grant. However, if that doesn't happen, and there is any type of delay, the airport with the money that Nick is talking about would potentially have to front that dollar value. So I think, in my opinion, worst case scenario that the airport has to front $10,100 for a couple months until we get the grant.
Other questions?
Just one, I don't have any of that paperwork in my,
Of the engineer's report?
yeah.
Yeah.
You don't.
I can get it for you. And these are both the designs for those projects. So it's not the actual reconstruction itself. This is just the design portion of those two projects.
That is correct, yep. I will change that. Well, no, let's keep the task order the same.
Yeah.
But yes, this is the design portion of both projects.
Okay.
The total grant value for corporate tax E1 is $2 million.
If Nick's confident of doing it this way, I guess I'm not too shook up by it. So.
We're estimating construction costs just over 1.8 million. And then the engineering is gonna be about that, or is that 171, 220?
And it's needed stuff.
Yep, yep. It's the worst pavement on the field right now, so.
I move we accept task order number 6 and task order number 7, along with approval to move forward on the geotechnical pursuit in both task orders.
Been moved, do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay. Been moved and seconded to approve task order 6 and 7 and concomitant approval of geotechnical pursuit activities under both task orders. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Motion carried.
Awesome, thank you, gentlemen.
Yep.
And then the last two, there's really no update for the phase 2 environmental assessment, which will probably be task order number 8 now. It's still pending the forecast and RSAD approval, so we won't be moving on this until after we get the RSAD and the forecast approved. And then the general update for the runway 27 ILS, working on that initial request letter. That's it for me.
Okay. Any other questions?
Just out of curiosity, Robert, we're working on this ILS thing for runway 27. It's probably going to take a while. Do we really think that overall that ILSs are still going to stay in the works with GPSs being the way they are?
I think it's going to take a long time before the FAA approves GPS only. And I think the battle with that is going to be operator pushback. And so when you talk about Image Air and other FBOs and corporate flight departments that have insurance and liabilities connected to their operations, they're gonna want the ILS in places. I think it's politically, the ILSs are going to be around for quite some time.
Okay.
I would
Yeah.
agree with that, just for redundancy alone. If your WAS goes down or whatever the case at the airport, to have the backup of the ILS, I don't see it going away for a minimum of 20 years. We could be surprised, but I don't think it'll happen anytime soon.
All right.
Yeah, I don't think it was a area in my career.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Other questions?
I'm glad you asked that question, John, because I've been asked that by several pilots, why you even bother?
And that, it's not that, I always tell people, it's not the pilots or the aircraft that need the ILS in there, it's the insurance company that wants the ILS there for the backup. And, because if you're in 0-0 visibility and your GPS goes out on the aircraft and you've got an ILS available, it's a solid backup. I mean, they just work. So that's the main reason.
Yeah, at a minimum, there's always gonna be some type of ALS. So.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
Well, manager's report.
Yep, next up to you.
As you guys can see, we are continuing our uptrend outside of March, where we had that fluke of a month where it really shot up. We are still seeing an uptrend from the slow start of the year. And I will say July has been very busy up until recently. It's been very nice. We had about a week and a half, 2 weeks of pretty busy days. We're seeing 8, 10, 12 aircraft in the morning, and another 4 or 5 in the afternoon. So flights are starting to pick back up again, and it's just nice. It makes the days go by a little bit quicker having the people coming in and out again. So unless you guys have specific questions, I do have 2 things just to bring you up to speed on.
Go ahead.
At the end of last year, we purchased a new LED rotating beacon to replace our aging beacon. As you remember, parts were getting harder and harder to come by on the old beacon, and we had some money left in last year's budget, and we were able to purchase that. We're to the point now where we've got other projects out of the way, and we are moving forward with replacing that. I don't need board action. I was just letting you know we've got Michiana Contracting is the company that did all of the airfield lights when we did our runway project, and they're the ones that maintain a lot of the more technical issues that we deal with. If it's changing a light bulb or a socket or a whip on one of the runway lights, we can do a lot of that in-house, but if we're going in changing circuit boards or we get into the transformers that step the currents up and down, we don't mess with that. We let Michiana come in and fix that. And they've provided us a quote for $4,650 for the installation of that LED beacon. So that would be coming in, bringing in their crane, removing the old beacon, and then installing the new beacon back in its place. I think it's a very reasonable quote, and they're the best in the area. I mean, they're really the only ones that do aviation lighting. So it's just letting you know we will be working on that. CHA is helping us get the paperwork through for the crane permit so that we can get that up and hopefully going here in the next month or 2.
Okay.
And then the second thing, I passed out a sheet. So we've been looking, we need a new courtesy car. Our Buick is over 20 years old, and it's costing a few $1,000s to maintain every year. It's just at the age where we need to trade it in. And we've been looking, and this used Bronco came up. It's a Bronco Sport over at Rice Ford. And until you guys can see the purchase price, but they're willing to give us a pretty good discount for a municipal discount as well as a trade-in value. And the guys went out and test drove it this morning. It just came on the lot, and it was a 2-year lease, and they gave the lease back in, and I think it would be a really good replacement for our Buick. So the only thing I would ask is if you guys do approve this, approve it pending. We've got to call in. I just want to make sure. I've never purchased a used car before. We normally order our vehicles, and I just want to make sure everything is kosher with the open door laws. So I've got to call into the city attorney just to make sure that we're following all of those rules. But from what I'm being told, we are, and this is one of those opportunities where it's just kind of too good to pass up. So I would just need board approval to make this happen.
I move.
We move to approve purchase of the Ford Bronco.
Yes.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion carried. Okay,
That's all I got.
let us know
How
what you
many
need.
courtesy cars we have left now?
That's the only one we technically own. The wastewater department is letting us use one of their old vehicles. They've got an old, I think it's an '05 or '06 Chevy Impala that they did not need. They were going to trade it in, but instead of trading it in, they're letting us use it until we can get another one to replace. I don't know if you remember last year, we took the Toro. We had the old Taurus station wagon, and we took it in to get the oil filters changed. And when we jacked it up on the post jacks, the front and the back bumpers sagged about 3 inches, and so they started looking into it, and the frame had rusted out. So we had to put it on a flatbed and take it to the scrap yard because it wasn't safe to be on the road anymore. And so Brian over at Wastewater was nice enough to let us borrow their Impala, and we would like to get another car here in the next year or two. They're just being gracious enough to let us use that. So when we get a new car, they'll get that one back and they can trade that in on one of their vehicles then, so.
Seems like a few years ago, we had 3 courtesy cars, didn't we? Several years ago.
When I started, we had we had the Taurus and we had what was that thing, Linda? It was a Mercury Sable. And that car, we did not know this, but that car had engine assisted brakes. And we found that out because the engine stalled while somebody was driving down the road and they lost about 60% of their brakes. So we took that to the junkyard that day. The engine had a crack in the cylinder or in the engine block. And so we scrapped that one, and then we bought, actually, it was Mayor Wiggins' old car that he was driving with the city. Instead of him trading that in, we got that car, and that's the one we are now trading in. So it has served the city very well over the last probably 30 years, and
Squeeze the last pennies out of that.
we have, yep. And it's just to the point it needs to be replaced.
Okay,
That's all I got.
anything further for the good of the order?
Next meeting is August 8th. It's early next month.
Yeah. Yeah, and I believe I'll be here again, so we'll leave the next day.
Okay.
I'll let you know. Okay, hearing no further action, meeting adjourned.
Very good.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, CHA.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
And Jay, I'll get those. I had printed out the drafts. I thought that I had the